January 2026 just witnessed a historic shift in global economics. And no, it didn't originate from the Federal Reserve or Wall Street. The BRICS nations Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, along with new members Saudi Arabia and Egypt, have activated something extraordinary. They're calling it the unit. And right now, it's processing real cross-border transactions. Let me clarify something crucial right away. This isn't a concept paper or a future proposal. The unit is operational. Today, it's functioning as a genuine payment alternative that enables massive international transactions without requiring US dollars. For decades, the American dollar dominated every corner of global trade. Nearly every international transaction, whether oil, electronics, or agricultural goods, was priced and settled in greenbacks. That was simply how the world worked. But something fundamental just shifted. The BRICS coalition didn't assault the existing framework. Instead, they constructed an entirely parallel system. They developed independent financial infrastructure, separate settlement channels, and distinct operational mechanisms. Then they activated it for nearly 3.6 billion people, roughly 46% of humanity. So how does this currency actually operate? What differentiates it from existing monetary systems? The architecture is surprisingly elegant. It rests on two foundational elements addressing the primary concerns any nation has about new currencies: stability and independence. Foundation 1. Gold reserves. 40% of the unit's value connects directly to physical gold stored in verified vaults across BRICS territories. This isn't paper gold or exchange-traded certificates. We are discussing actual physical bullion that undergoes independent audits. This design communicates credibility to global markets. Gold has maintained value across 5 millennia, transcending political systems and economic ideologies. It's their trust anchor. Foundation 2. Currency basket. The remaining 60% derives from a weighted combination of member nation currencies: the Chinese yuan, Indian rupee, Russian ruble, Brazilian real, and South African rand. This represents their confidence in collective economic strength. Their combined GDP exceeds $28 trillion. Their natural resources, manufacturing capabilities, and expanding consumer markets provide the backing. The formula: 40% established stability through gold, 60% growth potential through emerging economic powerhouses. This creates a currency designed to be both trustworthy and dynamic. The catalyst: why? January 2026. Why did these nations choose this particular moment to launch their monetary alternative? The answer traces back to February 2022. Following Russia's Ukraine invasion, Western nations executed an unprecedented financial action. They froze over $300 billion of Russian foreign currency reserves. Decades of accumulated wealth, stored in Western banking systems, became inaccessible overnight for every major economy observing this event, particularly those occasionally disagreeing with Washington or Brussels. This was a critical wake-up call. It demonstrated unambiguously that the global financial architecture could become a weapon. If your reserves exist within their system, they control your economic lifeline. And if Russia's nuclear-armed economy could face this, so could anyone. Nations like Saudi Arabia, China, India, Indonesia, and Turkey all recognized the same vulnerability. Their national savings could vanish instantly under the wrong political circumstances. Developing a contingency plan escalated from diplomatic conversation to urgent national security imperative. The unit represents that contingency plan, now operational. This isn't about initiating financial warfare. It's about constructing financial independence. They're building a parallel network where their commerce, reserves, and economic sovereignty cannot be frozen or controlled by external powers with different agendas. Real-world proof. Russia-China trade. You might wonder, can countries genuinely conduct large-scale trade without dollars? The evidence is already here. Consider Russia and China's current bilateral trade. As of January 2026, approximately 90% of transactions between these economic giants, hundreds of billions in oil, natural gas, machinery, electronics, and agricultural products occur without touching US dollars. $0 involvement. They settle directly in rubles, and yuan. This serves as the practical demonstration of everything the unit aims to achieve globally. Russia and China didn't wait for perfect conditions. Facing Western sanctions, they pioneered alternative pathways. Think of it this way. The unit is the newly opened superhighway, but Russia and China have successfully navigated the back roads for 4 years, proving the route works. That 90% figure isn't aspirational, it's current reality, verified by trade statistics. It represents the first major structural challenge to absolute dollar dominance in international commerce. The scale factor. Let's discuss scale. Because scale transforms experiments into genuine alternatives. This isn't a marginal coalition of minor economies. The expanded BRICS alliance, including Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Iran, represents staggering demographics. Nearly half of global population, approximately 46% of humanity, now resides in BRICS member or partner nations. Over 3.6 billion people. Consider the practical implications. The unit isn't launching into a hypothetical future market. It launches with an immediate user base of billions across major economies. It has instant purpose, because this massive bloc can immediately utilize it for mutual trade settlements. Russian oil to India, Chinese electronics to Brazil, Brazilian agriculture to China, Indian manufactured goods to Egypt, all potentially flowing through unit-based settlements. This population scale, combined with over $28 trillion in GDP and control over critical resources, oil, natural gas, rare earth elements, agricultural commodities, makes this historically significant. It creates gravitational pull that Western financial authorities cannot simply dismiss. The gold connection. This directly impacts something you might already own. Gold. Because the unit carries 40% gold, backing the system's success, creates substantial structural demand for the metal. BRICS nations already rank as the world's largest gold purchasers and producers. China, Russia, and India have been accumulating gold reserves for years. But if the unit gains serious traction, if additional countries join and more trade flows through the system, gold demand could accelerate exponentially. Major financial institutions like JP Morgan are projecting gold prices reaching $5,000 per ounce by late 2026. Some analysts forecast $8,000 or higher with widespread unit adoption. It's basic supply-demand economics. You have massive institutional demand from BRICS central banks requiring gold to back an expanding currency system, meeting relatively constrained global supply of physical gold. The unit isn't merely a currency innovation, it's a potential catalyst for gold market transformation. The scale factor. Let's discuss scale. Because scale transforms experiments into genuine alternatives. This isn't a marginal coalition of minor economies. The expanded BRICS alliance, including Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Iran, represents staggering demographics. Nearly half of global population, approximately 46% of humanity, now resides in BRICS member or partner nations. Over 3.6 billion people. Consider the practical implications. The unit isn't launching into a hypothetical future market. It launches with an immediate user base of billions across major economies. It has instant purpose, because this massive bloc can immediately utilize it for mutual trade settlements. Russian oil to India, Chinese electronics to Brazil, Brazilian agriculture to China, Indian manufactured goods to Egypt, all potentially flowing through unit-based settlements. This population scale, combined with over $28 trillion in GDP and control over critical resources, oil, natural gas, rare earth elements, agricultural commodities, makes this historically significant. It creates gravitational pull that Western financial authorities cannot simply dismiss. The gold connection. This directly impacts something you might already own. Gold. Because the unit carries 40% gold, backing the system's success, creates substantial structural demand for the metal. BRICS nations already rank as the world's largest gold purchasers and producers. China, Russia, and India have been accumulating gold reserves for years. But if the unit gains serious traction, if additional countries join and more trade flows through the system, gold demand could accelerate exponentially. Major financial institutions like JP Morgan are projecting gold prices reaching $5,000 per ounce by late 2026. Some analysts forecast $8,000 or higher with widespread unit adoption. It's basic supply-demand economics. You have massive institutional demand from BRICS central banks requiring gold to back an expanding currency system, meeting relatively constrained global supply of physical gold. The unit isn't merely a currency innovation, it's a potential catalyst for gold market transformation. What this means for America? What does this mean for the United States? To understand the implications, you need to grasp a concept most Americans don't realize exists, but benefit from daily. Economists call it the exorbitant privilege. Here's the simplified explanation. Because virtually the entire world uses US dollars for international trade, and central banks hold dollars as reserves, the United States enjoys financial advantages no other nation possesses. The U.S. can borrow more easily and cheaply than anyone else because global demand for dollar-denominated assets remains constant. America can run enormous trade deficits year after year, importing far more than it exports, because other countries need to accumulate dollars for global trade participation. Most critically, the U.S. can leverage dollar system access as powerful geopolitical leverage through sanctions, asset freezes, and financial exclusion. The BRICS unit directly challenges this entire arrangement. This isn't about dollar collapse next week or hyperinflation next month. That's not how this unfolds. Instead, the unit puts America's financial advantage on a countdown timer. It creates erosion, not explosion. For the first time in modern history, there's a credible large-scale alternative being constructed by major economies. It offers countries a viable method to reduce dollar dependency. The unit creates choice where monopoly previously existed, and each time a country settles even a portion of trade in units instead of dollars, it incrementally reduces global dollar demand that underpins American financial power. The third-party impact. Here's perhaps the most significant strategic element: the unit's impact on nations that aren't BRICS members yet. Countries watching very carefully. Major developing economies like Indonesia, Nigeria, Turkey, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Vietnam. Many struggle with massive debts denominated in US dollars. They're trapped in currency situations where local money depreciates while debt obligations remain in expensive dollars. They're frequently caught between competing geopolitical pressures from the US and China. For their leaders and central bankers, the BRICS unit isn't about ideological alignment. It's about something more practical: options and leverage, the ability to diversify risk, a method to trade with major partners without complete exposure to dollar volatility or Western policy decisions, a potential alternative if they face sanctions or financial pressure. Every time these countries experience economic stress from dollar debt, every time they feel squeezed by dollar-based sanctions, the BRICS alternative becomes more appealing. The biggest challenge now, the elephant in the room. For this system to not just launch, but actually thrive long-term, BRICS nations need something extremely difficult to achieve: sustained trust, coordination, and unified commitment. That's their greatest vulnerability. Let's be honest about internal tensions. BRICS is a coalition of nations that have often been rivals with directly conflicting strategic interests. China and India, the two demographic giants, have active border disputes and experienced deadly military clashes as recently as 2020. Russia and China present a united front against the West, but historically, they've competed for Central Asian influence. Brazil's democratic government often has different political values than Russia's authoritarian system. Managing a shared currency requires surrendering significant monetary sovereignty. That's an enormous ask for any proud, powerful nation. What happens during inevitable economic crises? Who decides monetary policy? Who controls the gold reserves? The greatest threat might not come from outside. It might be internal fracture and the difficulty of maintaining unity among diverse nations with competing interests. But here's the counter-argument. Shared opposition can powerfully unify. BRICS nations may have differences, but they share one overwhelming common interest: reducing dependency on a Western-dominated financial system that can be weaponized against them. That shared motivation, driven by genuine security concerns after witnessing Russia's financial isolation, may be strong enough to overcome internal differences. Bottom line assessment. Let's synthesize everything. What's the final assessment of the BRICS unit going live? This is not the story of the US dollar dying next month. That's sensationalism. The unit's launch better represents the starting signal for a gradual transformation of global financial architecture. The unit's real victory isn't immediately replacing the dollar. Its success is simply existing and functioning as a credible working alternative. For 80 years since Bretton Woods, there was effectively no choice in reserve currencies. The dollar was it. Now there is choice, and that changes everything. We're witnessing the end of total monopoly and the beginning of genuine competition in global reserve currencies. What this means practically, the dollar's dominance will face steady incremental pressure rather than catastrophic collapse. Countries suddenly have negotiating leverage they never possessed. When the US threatens sanctions, a country can now credibly respond. We'll shift more trade to the unit system. That's a game-changer in geopolitical negotiations. The world isn't splitting cleanly into two separate financial blocks overnight. Instead, we're evolving into a complex, multi-layered financial ecosystem. Countries will use different systems for different purposes, different partners, different transactions. Some trade in dollars, some in units, some in euros, some in yuan. The BRICS unit has firmly planted its flag in this new multipolar landscape, and once planted, it's very difficult to remove. The game has fundamentally changed. The rules that governed global finance for decades are being rewritten in real time. Whether you're an investor, a business owner, or someone protecting savings, understanding this shift isn't optional anymore. It's essential. The world emerging from this transformation will look very different from what we've known. The era of unchallenged dollar supremacy is ending. What comes next remains uncertain, but ignoring it is no longer an option. If you found this analysis valuable and want to stay informed about global financial shifts that affect your wealth, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. These aren't just distant economic events. They're changes that will impact your financial future. Join our community of informed viewers who understand what's really happening in the global economy. Subscribe now, and I'll see you in the next video.